Hello, and Namaste and Sat Sri Akal, and welcome to everybody today for our very first Hindu faith webinar, which is hosted by Kidney Wales and Kidney Research UK. I would like to thank the speakers and for those that are attending today. So my name is Bishra Riaz and I work as policy lead based in Scotland. I'm sure you can tell by the accent for Kidney Research UK, and my work entails raising awareness on chronic kidney disease amongst governmental and parliamentarian colleagues, how better way to support CKD patients through different pathways such as mental health, focusing on change that's also needed around CKD as well around Scotland. I also lead on a peer educator volunteer project, which is based in Scotland, raising awareness on organ donation, kidney health and kidney disease amongst the predominant South Asian communities in Glasgow and Edinburgh and surrounding areas. This project's now been running for 10 years and we've successfully engaged with over 10,000 people and had approximately 1,400 people sign up onto the organ donor register. So it's great to see the benefits that the project has had. So as I said, we're now one of the first projects that we're doing with collaborating with Kidney Wales, and we're hoping to do similar outreach work within Wales. So I will now pass over to Danielle, who is from Kidney Wales. She is an income generation and events manager and has been in the role at Kidney Wales for 8 years in April. One of the key areas of her role is working with the team at Kidney Wales to identify the needs of the community, the kidney community, and obtain great grant funding for projects such as this. It also includes supporting and building the project concept and also completing applications for funding. She also organises fundraising events and supports the community through the fundraising efforts, which has been an absolute pleasure as she gets an opportunity to meet so many wonderful people. So I'll pass over to Danielle.
Thanks, Bushra. So thank you for taking the time to watch the session this evening and join us. So Kidney Wales are thrilled to have received funding from NHSBT this year to deliver this series of webinars in collaboration with Kidney Research UK to help improve organ and tissue donation awareness within ethnic minority communities in Wales, particularly as Kidney Wales has a long and rich history in organ donation awareness and the law in Wales. So currently in Wales, there are around 250 people on the organ donation waiting list and roughly 1.5 million people in Wales on the NHS organ donor register. In 2022-2023, 126 people donated across Wales and 206 people in Wales had a transplant. The legislation on organ donation in Wales is deemed consent, and simply what this means is that if you haven't registered an organ donation decision, opt in or opt out, it is considered that you have no objection to becoming a donor. It's 8 years this year since the legislation was introduced in December 2015. Wales was the first country within the UK to implement this, and as an organisation, Kidney Wales campaigned heavily on the introduction of this legislation, and it is a piece of work we are really proud to have been involved with. The implementation of deemed consent in Wales led to an increase in the number of registered donors and a rise in the actual organ donation rates. This legislation was accompanied by extensive public awareness campaigns and education initiatives as well. We're fully aware that whilst we have the deemed consent law in Wales, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be talking about and raising awareness about organ donation. And this is exactly why we are holding this series of webinars with our colleagues in the NHS and Kidney Research UK. As we all know, organ donation is a sensitive topic, and we all understand why that is. But as a nation, we are proud of the innovation and courage shown during the 8 years of campaigning for the deemed consent legislation to take this forward. As a nation, we were confident in its ability to save lives, which we were able to demonstrate, which in return has inspired other UK nations to follow in our footsteps, with it being active in England and Scotland and in educational phase in Northern Ireland. So that's just a little update from me. Bushra, back over to you. Oh, you're still on mute.
Sorry, I thought I'd learned by now. So sorry about it. Thanks very much, Dan, for that. So we'll move on to our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Rajni Bejwani, who's a consultant physician and nephrologist at the University Hospital Heermuyres and volunteers with Kidney Research UK. So we'll just pass over to you, Rajni.
Thank you for the introduction, Bushra. Welcome everyone to the webinar.
I will just share.
So today I'm going to talk to you about South Asian kidney health and disease. So the outline of my next slide, please, Bushra. The outline of my talk is I'll just try to explain to you the role of kidneys and how kidney health in general is important, and then some specific issues related with South Asian population and what to do if you have been diagnosed with renal failure or kidney failure. Next slide, please. So the kidneys are vital and highly complex organs in our body, and they sit just under the diaphragm in the upper part of the tummy, and they are the size of a fist and they weigh about 160 grams. And usually people are born with two kidneys. They are bean-shaped structure, and that's why you can see them on the picture there. But sometimes people are born with abnormal shape or structure of the kidneys, or even with one kidney. Next slide, please. So what do kidneys do? So kidneys are the main organs that filter your blood, and the amount of blood filtered through both kidneys is about 180 liters of blood every day. That will be equivalent to about 720 cups of tea. So the blood runs through kidneys 4 times. You can imagine in 24 hours to be filtered. And by doing so, kidneys remove waste products and excess water, and that all goes in making urine. Kidneys balance electrolytes, that's the salts in your blood, and acidity in your blood, and try to maintain a neutral acid-base balance. They help to maintain blood pressure, and they produce hormones which help to form red blood cells which make your blood. And also they produce hormones or control for hormones which will help to maintain healthy bones. Next slide, please. So related to kidney disease, we use different terms, and I thought it would be useful to try to explain to you what those terms mean. First one is acute kidney injury. Acute means sudden. Kidney injury, although it's not a blow to kidney or anything, but it just means that kidneys have stopped working for a short period of time, and it can range from either a small loss of function to complete failure. And other term we use is chronic kidney disease, which will be on the next slide, but I'll show you. And chronic means over a period of time, there has been damage to the kidneys. So when does acute kidney injury occur? Acute kidney injury is mainly related to other illnesses like sepsis or dehydration or inflammation in the kidneys, or it can also be related to blockage of urine outflow, or sometimes related to certain medications. Many times it's reversible and preventable as well. And it's more common in people who are at risk of developing acute kidney injury, and that will include older people and also people who have got other pre-existing conditions, including chronic kidney disease. 1 in 5 patients who are admitted to the hospital will have acute kidney injury, and 1 in 10 people would die if they were admitted with acute kidney injury, and more so if other organs are also involved, like liver or lungs. Acute kidney injury can cause life-threatening complications. If not treated well, then people can die. And to treat those complications, we use treatment called dialysis, which is filtration or purification of blood through a machine. Next slide, please. Next term we use in kidney disease is chronic kidney disease, which is a long-term condition where kidneys do not work as well as they should. And this is measured by blood test, which is called eGFR, that is estimated glomerular filtration rate. You don't need to know that, but depending upon that level, we divide kidney disease into different stages, and that's the picture showing on the right-hand side. So depending upon what percentage of, or what is the level of eGFR, we say kidney stage would, chronic kidney disease stage will be 1, 2, 3A, 3B, 4, or 5. So up to stage 3, patients are usually managed in the community by general practitioners. And when the kidney failure reaches to level 4 or 5, they need to come to the hospital for specialist input from kidney doctors. Why is chronic kidney disease important? This is because it progresses, and can lead to fatal complications and also associated with very high cardiovascular mortality. That means patients die from heart disease related to chronic kidney disease. It is progressive and sometimes it can be very slow, but if we control risk factors, then we can slow down the progress of kidney disease and delay the need for either dialysis treatment or kidney transplant treatments. You can always calculate your own risk by using Kidney Health Check Calculator, which is on Kidney Research UK website. You can put your age, sex, your risk factors like hypertension, diabetes, and it will give you an estimate of what is your risk. If you know that if you've got blood or protein in your urine and all, so you need to put those things, and that will tell you over the next 2 years or 5 years what will be your chance of getting kidney disease. So what are the risk factors for chronic kidney disease? So there are many, as you can see in the picture, but mainly it's diabetes and hypertension. And I must say uncontrolled. If they're not very well controlled, then invariably they lead to chronic kidney disease. Other conditions like heart problems, or if somebody had a stroke, if somebody is obese, if there's family history of any form of kidney disease, tobacco use, older people, and I've added another, which is what we are talking about today, is ethnic minority group. So people from ethnic minority group are 5 times more common to develop chronic kidney disease. And again, mainly these factors are related to uncontrolled diabetes and hypertension, which are more common in South Asian population. Next slide, please. So what are the symptoms of chronic kidney disease? How would you know? Chronic kidney disease progresses over a period of time and people just start getting used to the symptoms. So many times there are no symptoms, but specific things to look for are if you're passing less urine than normal, if you've got swollen hands or feet, feel very tired, if you lose appetite and have unexpected weight loss, feel nauseous, or feel confused and have severe itching. But these are factors that develop in quite late stages of chronic kidney disease. So probably most commonly the diagnosis will be incidental. If you had blood test done, then we will get the result as EGFR that I was talking to you about, that is specific for kidney disease. Or if a urine sample is checked and if we find blood and protein in the urine, that would indicate there is kidney involvement. Sometimes people will have scans, X-ray, no, it's not shown on X-ray, but say CT scan or ultrasound scan or MRI scan on their abdomen. And if we find the kidneys can be of either abnormal shape or size, and incidentally we'll find out about it. And sometimes there's already a condition known in the family, and if we do genetic testing, then we can find out about some kidney conditions. Next slide, please. So this is a rough diagram. I don't know if I'll be able to show you properly, but this is about journey of patients with kidney disease. So people can present either as acute kidney injury, or sometimes if we do say blood test or something, we might find that they have got chronic kidney disease, or sometimes they present in what we call end-stage renal failure. That means their kidney function is less than 15%, and they have presented very, very late, again, because they didn't have any symptoms. So in any scenario, if they present, say if they present an acute kidney injury, either they will most probably recover if underlying problem is corrected, or sometimes they might succumb to it, unfortunately. Sometimes acute kidney injury will progress into chronic kidney disease, and again, in those situations, we'll have to manage it medically, but some people die during that phase over a long course of time. And sometimes acute kidney injury or CKD both can just progress to end-stage renal failure when your body can't really sustain without any supportive treatment. And this supportive treatment is provided by either dialysis or kidney transplant, or sometimes if patients are not suitable to get any of these treatments, or if they're older and frail and have got other comorbidities, then we opt for conservative treatment. Next slide, please. So the different modes of kidney replacement therapy, what we call it, is needed when the kidney function drops to below 15%, will be dialysis. And there are two types of dialysis: hemodialysis, which is done in hospital 4 hours, 3 times a week, which is a big undertaking, or it can be done at home through a machine which is attached to you. The machine takes the blood out from your body, filters it, and puts it back in your body. Second type of dialysis is done through tummy, where there's a big tube put in your tummy. Big amount of fluids are put in through that tube in your tummy, left it for some time, and drained out. The lining of the tummy acts as the dialysis membrane, we call it. So it filters all the toxic products. Then other option is kidney transplantation, and again, it could be living donor or deceased donor transplant. Some people, unfortunately, are not fit to get peritoneal dialysis or hemodialysis or even transplant, and then we manage them by medications, which is called conservative management. Next slide, please. Now, I would just try to address some of the factors important in South Asian communities. So kidney disease is up to 5 times more common in minority ethnic groups, as I said earlier, and this is because of prevalence of type 2 diabetes and hypertension, which are up to 2 to 4 times more common in South Asian population. And if, say, one Asian person with diabetes, that person will have 10 times more risk of developing kidney failure as compared to a white person with diabetes. And this is like quite striking figure. People from Asian minority group, they have got 3 to 4 times greater need for dialysis or transplantation than Caucasians in the UK. And men, especially, if they are middle-aged men, if their EGFR drops to about 45%, after that it progresses very rapidly for some reason in ethnic minority group. Next slide, please. More South Asian patients are currently waiting for a transplant, and significantly longer waiting times are recorded for successful match than the white patients. There are very poor organ donation rates, and there's low awareness about kidney health in South Asian population. And not only that, there is lesser engagement with health services from this group. Next slide, please. So this was mainly about communities, but what happens in the families, the dynamics are quite different in South Asian families as well. So as I said, diabetes and hypertension are more common, but probably there are non-compliance issues, and people want to try out different alternative therapies as well. At times we see they stop taking medications and go for something else. They start doing, some people will believe, yes, we do yoga and we can stop treatment. That can happen. The family dynamics can be quite complex in terms of having extended families, and if there's a patient in the family needing dialysis, or if they're needing emotional and financial support, and even distribution of household work as to how it works out. If there are young childbearing age female patients who might struggle to get pregnant, then again, they might have to go through difficult issues at home. Other thing, because we are all foodies, South Asians, there can be lots of restrictions because of diabetes, hypertension, people who have got CKD or dialysis. There are lots of restrictions, and if there's a big family, then cooking for different people, it becomes quite complex. And there are limited information and patient leaflets available in key languages. Next slide, please. Again, if we want to go back home for holidays, arranging dialysis, there'll be issues with that. There are risks of getting infections, especially blood-borne virus infections, getting hepatitis or stuff like that, or even reactivation of some of the infections which are specific to Asian subcontinent, like TB. And again, lots of people, if they've waited long enough here in the UK for a transplant, they might want to go back home and get a kidney from there. But many times we see they come with entirely different issues, post-op complications, infections, and really difficult issues. And again, I don't have much experience of managing kidney disease in children, but again, if there's a child with kidney disease, then the whole family dynamics change. And again, in our families, we don't discuss too much about death or organ donation or advance directives, or we don't share that many wishes with our family as to what we want after death with our organs. Next slide, please. You'll be glad to know this is the last slide, and I would just like to reiterate as to what to do if you have been diagnosed with kidney impairment, any form of kidney impairment. So management, I can divide into medical management and non-medical management. So it's very important to have regular reviews, regular checkups, regular blood tests, and it's important to take prescribed medications. It's important to avoid certain medications like anti-inflammatory medications or certain antibiotics. So people need to know that you have got chronic kidney disease and you're on these medications, and there might be interaction or doses need to be changed according to the level of kidney function. Then good control of diabetes and blood pressure. I can't really stress the importance of these two conditions in preventing and also reducing the risk of chronic kidney disease. It's important to take your vaccinations in time so that infection risks are reduced. Non-medical issues would be no smoking, of course, and alcohol. Well, know your limits, know your pints. That is the important message I can say. Healthy diet to maintain good kidney health, losing weight, exercise, and reducing the waist size will be important for diabetes control. And get all the support you need from us, from your doctors, from your families, and speak to people who have got these conditions, and you'll get more information and get all the support from the patient support groups. That's all I can say, really. That's the end of my talk, and I would like to thank, sorry, one more thing was the renal diet that I missed. So as I say, there are not many information leaflets available, but you can go on websites and speak to specific kidney dietitians, and they can give you all the information about how to cook food, because the way we cook our food, it can probably not work in the best way in chronic kidney disease. So, and also again, in South Asian population, as we fast quite a bit of times. So it's important to know what medications to take, when can you fast, how dehydration can affect your kidneys. So it's important to know about that. So not only we're mainly talking about Hindu festivals, but again in Ramadan and all, it's very important to know what you can, and there are some articles to give you information and advice about that. I would like to thank Kidney Research UK for asking me to talk in this webinar, Kidney Wales and Bushra and Neerja, who have introduced me to Kidney Research UK. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dr. Rajni. That was always informative whenever I hear it. Thank you so much. So without what we'll do is our next speaker, we'll move on to, who is Dr. Neil Sonaji. Dr. Neil Sonaji is a consultant radiologist at the Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust and Royal Marsden Hospital. He's here today in his role as an active healthcare volunteer at the BAPS Temple in Neasden and a core member of the JHOD, which stands for the Jain and Hindu Organ Donation Steering Group. He has been promoting organ donation in the Hindu community for over 12 years, leading on several events, conferences, and production of resources such as YouTube videos and leaflets on this topic. His voluntary work has allowed him to work with a variety of Hindu temples and organisations in the country to promote organ donation. So thank you very much, Dr. Neil, for speaking today, and Dr. Neil will also be speaking about the Hindu faith perspective on organ donation. So I will pass you over to Dr. Neil.
Thank you, Bushra, for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak. as Bushra mentioned, I'm speaking here not really as a doctor, but as a volunteer at a Hindu organization called BAPS Swaminarayan Temple, as well as Jain and Hindu Organ Donation Steering Group. And I, within that, so firstly, so this is our headquarters in Neasden, which some of you may have seen online or visited. And we've got several temples across the country. And within that, we have a healthcare team which carries out various health and community projects. And organ donation has been one of them for the past 12 years. And with that, we've worked with different temples around the country, held different events, and generated some educational material, videos, leaflets, held various events. And through that, I've been fortunate to meet several religious leaders of different Hindu and Jain organizations and speaking to them about their views. And so I hope today what I can represent is not my own personal view, but the views of all the different Hindu religious leaders that I've met over the years doing some work on organ donation in the community. There's a group, as I mentioned, these are some of our core members and a few photos of some events we've had in Parliament and other places of Jain and Hindu Organ Donation Steering Group. This comprises of several different temple organizations and community leaders in the Hindu community and the Jain community. Jay, who's speaking after me, is also a core member and a trustee of that. And it's allowed us to all collaborate and share information. And again, a lot of different views, a lot of nicely coinciding views, but varying opinions that I'll be presenting today on behalf of Jodh as well. So this has already been covered very well in the previous talk, but as we've heard, there's a higher number of Asians waiting for an organ transplant due to conditions such as high blood pressure and diabetes leading to high rates of kidney failure. And this is effectively why we're talking today and why it's important to discuss what the faith perspective in Hinduism says about organ donation. Because, as we know, you're more likely to get a better match with a transplantation from the same ethnic group. And so with that, we also know, as mentioned, that there's a lower number of Asians donating, and that's something we have to explore and improve upon. But is this imbalance between the recipients and the donors is why Asians may end up waiting for a transplant for longer, suffering for longer from the side effects of dialysis and other treatments, and ultimately more likely of dying while waiting for a transplant. And that's the imbalance that we, as Jodh and as volunteers, we aim to reduce and eliminate. So let's talk a bit more about Hinduism specifically and how some core principles tie in with organ donation. And as I mentioned, some of these principles are ones that we frequently hear that different speakers and religious leaders from different organizations come and say when they speak about this topic. So just talking generally about Hindu beliefs, there's a few beliefs that some of you may have heard of. And the first one I'd like to talk about is something called Atma realization. And that effectively is a core principle across Hinduism, which states that we all believe our true self to be the soul and not the body. And so reincarnation, which again you may have heard of, is where after you pass away, the soul passes into a different body. And that is our true self, the soul, not the body that we are currently, the soul is using effectively. And ultimately the aim as a Hindu would be going through these cycles of birth and death to release ourselves from that, and eventually our soul would reach the ultimate abode of God. The next principle just to mention is seva, which means selfless service to others. That can come in multiple guises, and it could mean service at home to your own family or looking after your own family. It could be the people you work around. It could be the wider community, and it could be the whole world. And that's something that most practicing Hindus would find a way to do some seva as part of their daily routine or their normal activities alongside their work and family commitments. And the third principle is something called dan, which effectively translates to donation. And this is selfless giving. And this can again come in multiple guises. Some people may have a regular donation of their own time, which could be for seva. So there's a time there with seva as well. It could be through monetary donations, and it could be through donating other parts of your own property, or in this case, we'll be talking about our bodies. So tying that in now with organ donation. So firstly, as I mentioned, we are not this body. And so ultimately, Hindus would believe that once we pass away, the body is no longer of any use to us. And also when we're living, if there's some part of the body that we don't need to live effectively, again, we shouldn't feel any attachment to that body or that organ. So if there's an organ we can donate, then that's fine. Seva, as I mentioned, serving others. So by giving an organ, we know that you effectively could be saving that person's life or really transforming their life and their health. And so that would be a very high form of seva that would fit perfectly with Hindu beliefs of serving other people. And as some of the religious speakers have described it, organ donation, effectively a donation, is one of the highest forms of dan or donation, because you're giving a part of yourself away selflessly. And that taking into account, and I know the risks are very low, or taking into account that, you know, we will have, as human beings, a big attachment to our own bodies. So doing something which doesn't benefit ourselves, but to other people, is why it's described as a high form of dan or donation. And there's nothing, when speaking to people much more educated than me, who know the scriptures and who have studied them at length, there's nothing in the scriptures in Hinduism that prevents you from being an organ donor or indeed an organ recipient. And none of the spiritual leaders we've ever spoken to have said anything that would cast any doubt about the validity of doing that from a Hindu perspective. And ultimately, these acts of seva and dan, to reiterate, they should be done without expecting anything in return. And that's important, that we're not looking for any gain in return, or it's not a transactional thing. And that's pertinent because of some people, as mentioned before, might think about organ transplants abroad, where the principle isn't the same as in the UK, and there may be a monetary gain, and people who might be short of money, they can be a trade, and that can lead to again a monetary gain or even illegal activities in some countries. And that's why it's important to distance ourselves from that, and saying that, you know, this is supported from a Hindu perspective as a form of seva and dan without accepting anything in return. So let's look at a couple of scriptures. So the Manusmriti is an ancient Vedic text, and one of the lines from that, which has been quoted before, and this includes in some of our educational leaflets, which I'm going to be showing a few of these quotes from, says, "Of all the things that it is possible to donate your own body is infinitely more worthwhile." And another quote from a text called the Bhagavad Gita, which translates to the Song of God. And it's a very popular and revered text in which Lord Krishna, who, again, a lot of you may have heard of, his idol is in multiple temples across the country, and Lord Krishna is answering questions and discoursing in that. And in that he says, as a person discards the old worn-out clothes to put on new ones, the eternal soul discards the old body on death and takes rebirth into a new one. So again, just reiterating the principles of reincarnation and how we're not the body. To explain that a bit further, there's a bit more text here. So life after death, that's a strong belief for Hindus, and it's part of an ongoing process of rebirth, and the law of karma decides which way the soul will go in the next life. Would it go into another body, or what type of body, and would it otherwise attain God? And the Bhagavad Gita describes the mortal body and its immortal souls in simple ways, like the relationship of a clothes and a body to clothes to a body. So now looking at some of our religious leaders that we've asked in the past to speak or provide quotes on organ donation. So BAPS Swaminarayan organization, which I'm a member of, our spiritual leader, our guru, who's followed by millions across the world, he had said before that to donate an organ is truly a selfless act of seva, and is something that every person who is able to should think about. The spiritual head of Srinath Dham Haveli in Harrow, another large organization, whose name is Dwarkesh Lalji from Ahmedabad, said that death is certain, but the simplest way to extend life beyond death is through donating body parts. So another way of supporting and doing service even after you passed away. Pujya Dev Prasad Bapushri, another popular spiritual leader, has said that according to Sanatan Vedic Dharma, every person should support organ donation because many lives can be saved, effectively because of the service we could be doing for others. ISKCON, which is the Krishna temples across the world, a large organization, one of their ministers of religion who supported organ donation in several videos and events, he has said that this is the best form of daন that you can give, is the daন of the body, and therefore we should be selfless in doing so. And then the Jalaram temples, which is another a large group of temples, and the Leicester temple is a core member of Jordan, supportive, and one of their head priests has said that daন is an act of selfless giving, which is an integral part of our religion. Our religion has no barriers to organ donation. And in a separate quote, he has also said that according to Hindu religion, the word seva, which we've talked about, charity or giving or service, has deep meaning in that donating a part of your body to give a life to another person is the highest form of seva you can participate in during and after life. Nothing in the religion is beyond that. The word charity or seva is elaborated in the Gita Ji, the Veds and the Upanishads, which are the ancient Vedic texts which Hinduism is based on. So a couple of questions that people may ask, or that we have tried to dispel some misconceptions, is people ask, could this affect reincarnation? We've talked about reincarnation, and ultimately the answer from everyone we've asked has always been no. The soul immediately leaves the body once you pass away, and so it does, whatever happens to the body after that, it doesn't affect where the soul goes or what it attains after that. And the body is going to be cremated anyway in normal Hindu ritual. And another question then regarding that is whether the funeral arrangements would be normal after organ donation. And again, the answer has been yes. And we know from the specialist organ retrieval surgeons that they take great care in removing the organs and ensuring that the body is ready for funeral arrangements without much mark or scar of any organ donation having been performed. And as we know, it's time sensitive. These things happen quite fast, and so it doesn't really delay the funeral arrangements, which normally is not immediate. For most Hindus, there's normally a few days a gap. There's not a need for that to be immediate. I'm going to now just talk about, as I mentioned, we've done about 12 years or so of promotion, and this is a survey we performed a couple of years ago in our temple community. And just bear in mind that this is a community which already has had messaging before about organ donation, so it might not be representative of Hindus across the country, but it was encouraging to see that the results. So 415 responders, the majority of which 92.5% were Hindus. So effectively a survey mostly looking at Hindu perspectives in our temple community. And firstly, the majority of them knew that the religion supports organ donation. There was a very tiny percent that were unclear about that, or a few didn't know, but more than 3/4 knew that we were allowed to be organ donors. And those that asked, if you're not on the organ donation register, would you be willing to donate your organs after death? And again, only a very tiny percent said no. It was majority yes, or yes, I've already registered, which is the green 30.4%. And a few said maybe, but I'm not sure, 15%. Have you discussed organ donation with your family? So as we know, it's important to convey the decision to the family so they're aware of the decision at the time of death, which is obviously a difficult time to be having a new discussion. And of that, 60% said they had a discussion, and about another 9% had said that they'd started a conversation. And so that's something that we've been working on some of our projects and campaigns. And would you object to a family member donating an organ? And I think only a very tiny percent said no. The majority, 80%, said they would support it, and another 11% said, I'm not certain, it would depend. But again, the overwhelming majority were supportive of that. And so I think coming to a few concluding points, and I think it's important when we're looking at different faith groups, and having worked with other faith groups outside of Hindus and Jains, it's important firstly to build trust and make sure that the community you're speaking to, they hear it from trusted opinions, and that could be religious leaders or community leaders who they look up to. It's more to explore the questions, because a lot of the questions that the community might have might not be might seem trivial to us, but actually it could be their major stumbling block to them from donating or signing up. And it can be something very simple that can be easily corrected with some correct messaging or answering the right questions or the right religious speaker saying the right thing. Support to discuss it openly. There can be some very difficult discussions, especially about death, as we know, and so encouraging to talk about it in a wider audience, but then encouraging people to go home and talk about that in a smaller group with their family is really important as well. Correcting any myths or misconceptions, as I mentioned, and getting that universal voice and support. And as I said, we're lucky that all the religious community leaders that we have always approached have been very supportive. And I know there are some challenges in other faith groups where that might not be the same and people might be nervous or unsure about what the religion says and they don't want to upset that. But I think once that you've had the opinion of the right people and the right support, it's important to show how universal it is with support from different angles. And ultimately then raising awareness and educating the community. And what we've done in the past, and what I would say is that there's a lot of material out there that that Jord has produced and the different temples have produced with leaflets, videos, web content, and I'm going to show you some examples. So the material's there and can be shared, and again working with NHSBT over the years in producing that. And then reaching out to the community. It could be larger events or conferences, it could be very small short seminars of just 10 minutes within a larger event that has a more captive audience there. And then holding stalls at large events, again, where people can find information, people to talk to about organ donation as well. And ultimately encouraging everyone to sign up and speak to their family and friends about the decision, spreading the message and spreading their decision as well. So this is, for example, on YouTube, one series of 7 videos that we produced, all about a minute or so long, and a longer video of 6 minutes about Hinduism and organ donation, and about the law, about some of the myths, about some of the facts. And with Jord as well, there's been several different videos. This is from our Jord website, which I'll share in a minute. There's several different videos, and we've tried to make them in different languages or subtitles in different languages to reach out to as wide a wider Hindu and Asian community as possible. And several leaflets as well, which we've made and updated over the years, again working with different temples and organizations and NHSBT. And I'm aware that I'm talking about the faith perspective, and as I mentioned at the start, I'm a volunteer and I'm not a faith figure myself, and so I thought it would be good to finish my talk with a minute or so of listening to some of our faith leaders speaking about organ donation themselves on one of our previous videos that we made actually several years ago now, but I think it's got a few nice quotes in there, so I'm just going to finish my talk by showing that. And I think, as I mentioned, Jain and Hindu Organ Donation as a group, it's a really active group. We're trying to do different projects across the country to raise awareness for Hindus and Jains on organ donation. And so if any of the local organizations or temples wanted to reach out and work together, then these are some of our details on our website. We'll be really happy to work with you all in supporting the cause. I'm just going to stop sharing now and try and share this video. Hoping that the sound works, so I'm just going to start this from here.
Among 4 or 5 donations.
From whatever the scriptures I have so far read, I can make out that there is no impediment as such for Hindus to make an organ donation and to put their organs into use after the death.
To the best of my knowledge, there is nothing in the Hindu scriptures that prohibits the practice of organ donation. In fact, we know that our scriptures, our spiritual leaders, they encourage what we call dan or donation. They encourage seva, serving others. Our spiritual leader, His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj, often says, in the joy of others lies our own.
Swami Prabhupada, very much in keeping with the tradition of the Gita, which states that this body is not really the real self. The real self is the spirit, the Atma, the soul. And that's very important. The body is not really that important. It will be gone at the end of this life.
So this is one form of dana as well, in which we can help other people after the soul has left the body. Because even though the soul is eternal, the body is perishable. And once the body has gone, then if that body or the organs in that body can help somebody else to live, that in itself is a great act of punya or merit.
Well, if it
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and I'm really grateful for the opportunities to speak and all the different Hindu temples and groups in Jordan who have worked so hard over the years for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Neil. That is just, I was just overwhelmed with the information. I've heard talks, and we've worked a lot in Scotland around faith, and you know, we worked with a lot of the Hindu faith leaders in Scotland. But Dr. Neil, that was amazing. It's phenomenal, and I think it'd be great if that's like the best practice that you're using in England would be great to be used in Wales as well. I think an outreach there as well, and I think we can see that that more needs to be done around education and awareness within the Hindu communities in Wales as well. But thank you so much, Dr. Neil. It was honestly, it was fantastic. Without further ado, I will pass on to the next speaker because I'm just conscious of time. So our next speaker is Jay Patel. I will just, yep. So as I said, Jay Patel is our next speaker. He is, will be speaking on the family perspective on behalf of a donor family about his son, Ari. I'm not going to talk too much and introduce too much, and I'm sure I will pass over to Jay, who will introduce himself and his story, and this is his story to share. So over to yourself, Jay.
Thank you, Bushra. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to both yourselves, the audience in Wales and the team in Wales. Plus, you know, Neil and myself, we have worked together for multiple years, so it's a good handover point between us. I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm a father of 3 children. Ari, who is our oldest, plus Asha and Ilo, who are twin girls. Without further ado, it's probably best that I tell you a little bit about Ari, but I'll do it through a video. And then what I'll do is I'll talk to a couple of presentation pages, which kind of illustrates our story and our reason for being a donor family and why we decided to be that. So, Bushra, if you don't mind, can you share the video of Ari, please?
He taught us how to be better human beings. He was only here for 3.5 years, but I can truly tell you that he achieved more in his life than I think Sian and I can ever achieve in ours. I took the instant decision and said, please save every single organ you can. Allow us to donate his organs to other needed children. I don't think the consultant or the nurse expected that.
I didn't feel at any point any pressure to have to do it, and I felt I could change my mind.
The nicest thing about that time was they gave us 24 hours more with Ari. This is Ari's life, this wasn't our life to give. I kept on saying, tell us what you want to do, Ari. And maybe this was his way of telling us that, you know, I've tried, and it wasn't enough. You know? So I think we've done the right thing.
I didn't realise how rare it is for children to donate their organs. I thought it was quite a normal thing to do.
It's important that people think about decisions in a logical way, and that's why it was so easy, because it was really about Ari and what Ari would do to give back to others. His twin sisters have donor cards, and they're proud of having them. We have a lot of amazing videos, memories, photos of him. But this one thing, I think, helps us heal. It helps us believe that Ari's life wasn't wasted. While we lost our little boy, he donated his organs and we were proud of that. And Ari, I'm sure, lives on in others. Maybe the girl that has his heart has the same smile.
Thank you. So while Bushra moves to the presentation, let me tell you a bit about Ari and our decision. Well, first and foremost, I think it's important to state, myself and Sina, we're both Hindus. We're Patels. We come from a very large family. And when we made this decision to donate Ari's organs, we didn't realize the journey that it would take us on and kind of culminating in meeting people like Bushra, meeting people like Dr. Sajani, because we didn't understand or know that there were lots of myths and misconceptions around organ donation within our own community, but not in just ours, but in the wider community, like Neil suggested earlier. If you can pull up page 1, I'll just walk people through what was our decision and why did we decide. I think if you turn to the second page, please. I thought I'm going to do this through photos. It's probably easier sometimes to see visually the life that Ari had and how we came to our decision. Ari had an accident at home. He suffocated on a blind cord in our house. And when we found him, he was unconscious. And within 7 minutes, paramedics had come to try and intubate him. They tried for 45 minutes, but he spent 4 days, the 4 next days in intensive care and never regained consciousness. Ari, the photo I show there is one of the last photos I ever took of him and his sisters. And it kind of brings back why, the fun and joy of having him. But more importantly, the photo you see at the bottom is after 4 days, Sina decided, it was actually both a joint decision that Sina and I made. We made it at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was something we felt that was important to us. Did we think about our religious aspect of why we should or should not donate his organs? And in all honesty, it was more a human decision. We made the decision that was based on the facts that we were provided by some amazing doctors at St. George's Pediatric Unit in Tooting. And when we made that decision, we made it with the full information of the fact that we knew that Ari's organs, after 72 hours, would start to deteriorate. And Sina's one thought was this: how can we not think about doing something for other children, where if there was a scenario that Asha, Isla, or Ari would need any organ, and they were desperately waiting on that waiting list, and they knew that there was an opportunity to retrieve an organ from someone that had died in circumstances that were not their fault. And that's the way we thought about it. So Sina finally, after making that decision, you see her asleep. She slept with Ari for 3 hours, and I just sat by her bedside. But I think it's important for people to understand that we made a decision based on fact. We then asked around our faith, and if you could turn to the next slide, Bushra. I think it's really important that I give a viewpoint of my mother. My mother is devout. My late mother is a devout Hindu. She spent a lot of time, teaching us the practice of Hinduism, and a lot of the aspects that Neil had touched on. We weren't necessarily ever told about organ donation. Did we ever have a conversation with our parents about organ donation? No. But one thing we did know is that we were able to leave a legacy based on the fact that we could make such a decision to help others, and that self-sacrifice, Dan, and some of the words that you heard from Dr. Sajani actually resonate with why we done what we did. We are proud of that decision, because what people don't understand is that one decision has a ripple effect. The ripple effect is this: there are two people that Ari saved their lives of. A girl who has his heart. She is alive now. She's 10 years old. Think about the number of people that she touches. Also a boy, and I can only resonate to how sick this boy was. He needed 5 organs. We recently met a couple who have a young son, age of 3, in a very similar circumstance, who needs 4 organs because he has cancer. He has cancer of his liver, and it's now extended to his bowel and his intestine. And this boy received 5 organs. It's the first time in the UK that someone so young had received so many organs from a young child, from Ari. This boy was 3 years old, and today he is 10 and still at school, and has a number of siblings that he still adores and lives with. His parents and the parents of the mother have been in contact, and they've told us how those children live as full lives as they can. They have their problems, but they are alive, and we're grateful of that decision. Why do I say forever proudy? One of the last things that Ari ever said to his ma, as most of you know, or his nanny, seen his mum's mum, seen his mum. She'd taken him out a week before and said, "Nanny, I want mum and dad to be proud of me." And she only told us a couple of years ago. Probably 4 years after he passed away, but it's stuck. We are proud of Ari. We're proud of our decision. I don't think we would, given any change in circumstances, we would change that decision. And I think, for us, Ari leaves a legacy, and that legacy is how he gave back. I said this at his funeral. I said that he would achieve more in his life than I will ever achieve, and I hold true to that. But there's one thing that I wanted to touch on. Dr. Sajani mentioned about how retrieval surgery takes place, and how the body is left for those loved ones that care for those individuals. So I'll give you the scenarios, Ari. Ari spent 24 hours more with us. He was kept on a ventilator for those 24 hours. In a known COVID world, 150 people came to see him at the pediatric unit. It's impressive how 150 people did come and see him, and that it was like a turnstile, and no one objected from the hospital and those that wanted to see him and pay their last respects. Like I said, I'm a Patel. I had approximately 32 cousins arrive from all over the world to come and say goodbye to Ari. In addition, we walked into surgery the following day after making that decision. We were allowed to go straight into surgery with him and his consultant, who took care of him for the last 4 days, also took time out of his personal time and came and made sure that everything was all right. Retrieval surgery took about 5.5 hours. They took 7 organs in total. When Ari came back, there was 22 of us in a room. Those 22 people are my immediate family and Sina's immediate family. We dressed him, and I think it's really important. I'm hoping you can see me. But if you look at your chest and you look here where your heart is, there's a small plaster there. On his tummy, there's a small plaster here. And that was it. They'd taken 7 organs. He was lighter, there's no question about it. But he was Ari. There was no change in Ari in any way. But he'd gone through what seemed to be a quite normal surgery, and he was back with us. And he post-surgery, there was no defamation of him or his character or his body. There are myths that I've heard that are where people have asked me, was he butchered? And I will categorically say no, he was never butchered. He was. We were treated with utmost dignity and respect, and he was treated with utmost dignity and respect. And the nurse that took care of him during that time is still a good friend of mine. The NHS have an amazing concept of having SNODs. They're called specialist organ donation nurses, and those nurses take care of those loved ones till from the time you make a decision until you go to surgery. But after that, we have a very good relationship with Ari SNOD, and I always say that Joe Cox is the last person to have taken care of Ari in the NHS, and I'm truly proud of that. Bushra, do you mind going to the next slide? I think if you read the words on this one picture, it says everything about what I've just talked to, leaving a legacy. For those of you that can't read it, because I also need to zoom on it, the words say, "Thank you for my heart." We received this letter. We received this picture, who's from the girl that received his heart in 2018. The letter had no less than 32 thank yous. I can't comprehend what it takes for a parent to have to write such a letter, but we were truly proud to have received it. And I am here today to talk to everyone on this call, plus those that are watching through the recording, that, you know, for us, we had a decision: Ari dies or Ari leaves. Ari helps others and leaves a legacy. And, you know, we are truly proud that we were able to make this decision. It's very rare for any person, adult or child, to be in a situation where they can donate their organs. But we were in that 1 percentile of population of death. And of that, we made the right decision. I can tell you in 2023, the stats are staggering. Only 52% of pediatric organs that can be consented to are actually consented to. That means there's still a lot of work to do to promote from people like Sina and I and others, where parents have made decisions for their children to donate their organs. And that cuts across multiple religious faiths and across society. So, you know, the work isn't done, I don't think, in any way. And hopefully hearing stories like ours inspires someone to think at that time that, you know, there is some good that can come out of losing a child. I won't lie to anyone. It is hard losing a child. It is one of the most difficult periods of our lives that Sina and I have been through. But, you know, we do celebrate his life every day. There's not one day that we don't feel that the decision we made was right. His sisters keep us constantly on our toes, and you can see them there. But they talk about Ari. So I think in leaving a legacy, we know that his sisters will always talk about Ari in current text. They'll always talk about the good he done as opposed to his death. And we've normalized death, not just for his sisters, but also for our wider community. You know, I do many of these talks. I work with Jay Hod. I've done numerous projects with Dr. Sajani, and I think that will just continue. I think there is no end to to making sure that people are educated through the experiences of what we've gone through. I'll pause there and I'll hand back to you, Bushra. If there's any questions, and I am fully open to taking questions, or I can comment at a later time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jay. I had to hold back my tears every time I listen to your story, Jay. It just makes me well up. Honestly, I've heard this about, I think, 6-7 times now. I've heard you speak, and every time, Jay, it's just, oh, I always say God give you strength, and such a blessing. You're so blessed, honestly. I know I'm just conscious of time. What we'll do is, as I said, Dr. Radha unfortunately can't make it today, so I'm just going to play a short video just of her talk, and then hopefully if we're just amongst ourselves, if we want to discuss or ask any further questions, and then it'll give us an opportunity to talk thereafter, if that's okay. So what I'll do is I will just share my screen, and I can have, so Dr. Radha is an ICU consultant at the Royal Alexandra Hospital in Paisley, based in Glasgow. She has been working on the Organ Donation Committee with Greater Glasgow and Clyde for numerous years, and has done a lot around organ donation awareness within Glasgow and within the NHS. She also hosts training sessions amongst the community on organ donation, and is very active within the organ donation teams within Scotland. So I will just share my screen, and I will just play a short video just with Dr. Radha's talk.
So good evening. I think it's testament to the work of Kidney Research UK, NHSBT and Scottish Government that, 3 years on, when we've been doing this sort of promotional work, I find that I'm actually speaking to a group that I've already got a very informed view about organ donation. And as Bushra, Nirja and the other speakers have pointed out, and Liz again has alluded to, it is our choice. There isn't, this isn't coercion, this isn't force, and our job in these various roles that we do is just to make sure that people have the right information to make the right decision at a time when they're surrounded by an avalanche of grief. Thank you very much, Nirja, for that kind introduction. I'm a consultant in intensive care at Paisley. I also work with NHSBT as a clinical lead in organ donation, and I also have the privilege of looking after trainees in intensive care medicine, young doctors who are going to actually become consultants of the future. We've been doing these webinars for a long time, Nirja, Bushra and myself, and due to COVID, we've actually converted our face-to-face seminars into webinars. And again, all credit to Bushra and Nirja, who actually converted adversity into an opportunity. And we've done, I think, around 11 of these, along with some radio programs as well. And I'm going to not take too much time on going over some of the slides, because Liz has already sort of described what we do from the viewpoint of NHSBT, but tell you a little bit about our own journey with this and what we do in intensive care. Next slide. I think the truth is that we need everybody. This is Gordon, who had a life-saving heart transplant many years ago and is currently a father, owns his own business. I just find his sort of campaign so life-affirming. Those of you who've had the privilege of actually meeting him in person will sort of confirm the fact that he is so positive about his experience. He doesn't know who he got his heart, he probably does, but he doesn't know who he got his heart from, whether it was a black person, a brown person, a white person. He doesn't know if they were Christian, if they were Catholic, if they're Protestant, and actually it doesn't matter. Whoever made that decision, whoever family had the generosity and the bravery at that time to say, yes, saved the life of Gordon, and now I have allowed Gordon to live a full life. And the legacy of that person lives on through Gordon. Next slide, please. Again, I won't go over the slide. The fact remains that there is a gap between donation and transplantation. And just a sort of slide, a couple of slides to illustrate the point that even though we may all sign up to the organ donor register, if you look at the data from 2018, just as an illustrative point, only 1% of us will be in the situation where actually we can proceed to donation. We're 5 times more likely these days to need transplants, and that's because we're living longer, and kidney transplants and liver transplants are offered as a life-saving choice, and we are less likely to be in a position to actually donate. And so we do need everybody, and we need everybody to sign up just to be able to narrow that gap. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And with this percentage of people who are in a position to donate, if we have families refusing, then that reduces the number of patients that can actually proceed to donation. And the other fact that we have seen time and time again over the last 5 to 7 years is that while we've increased the number of family sort of acceptance or agreements when our white Caucasian group, family refusals still seem to be a large stumbling block for our Black and ethnic minority groups. And the reasons might be religious, the reasons might be cultural, or the reasons might just be misinformation. And with our current sort of experience from the pandemic, we know how much social media can play a part in misinformation. And Sheikh Rizwan's sort of eloquent sort of illustration of the Islamic case, every religion does support charity, supports helping, but it is having the right information at the right time that allows families to make the right choice. Next slide, please. My job in intensive care have an enormous privilege because most of the time I actually help to save lives along with an array and vast army of very qualified nurses, doctors, and healthcare support workers. However, in a very small percentage of patients, we cannot save their lives. We reach a point when we have to change the focus of care to comfort and dignity. So we have to discuss end of life with them. What I do sort of like to stress is that this decision is not made by one person. This decision is made by a multidisciplinary team. And the point at which we reach clinical futility often is sort of recognized by families well ahead of we do it. So it's not as if it comes as a surprise to families when we tell them that we can't save their loved one's life anymore, that we are fighting a losing battle and it would be time for us to focus on their comfort and dignity. Most often we find that families, certainly pre-COVID, when they were at the bedside of patients, they were able to recognize it far ahead of us. Next slide, please. And the donation happens after death. And this is just a biological definition of death, which says that it is the irreversible loss of all our essential functions which are necessary to our existence. Next slide, please. And donation can either happen after brainstem death, which is when someone has a bleed in their brain or a large stroke or a tumor, and the brainstem, which is the vital part of our brain, which controls our respiration and circulation, at the back of our brain is compressed. And we know that once a patient has achieved brainstem death, there is no chance of them surviving without life support. There is no prospect of survival. And we do very, very stringent tests that are done by 2 doctors. One of them has to be a consultant. The other one has to have been qualified for at least 5 years. And more, and Liz would sort of confirm this, we actually get families to witness the brainstem death so that they have tangible proof that their relatives are not going to survive the illness. We can also proceed to donation after circulatory death, which is when the heart stops. We proceed with donation. Next slide, please. And thankfully in the UK, we have a robust system of legal and ethical governance. We have a number of organizations that are regulatory in nature, like the GMC, like NICE, the UK Academy of Royal Colleges, which have all written very clear, unambiguous guidelines to help us navigate the situation where we can proceed from futility to actually creating a legacy of the dying patient and actually saving other lives and giving hope to many others. Next slide, please. The GMC and the ethical and the UK Academy of Royal Colleges says that we should give full consideration to the matter of donation when caring for a dying patient. Next slide, please. And this is why most ICUs in the country have some sort of an aid memoir or a tool to remind us about organ donation. Organ donation has now become an integral part of our end-of-life care pathways. And my own unit, we have something called a comfort tool. So C stands for consensus decision regarding fertility. So all members, including nursing staff, irrespective of hierarchy, have to agree that there is no prospect of survival before we move to discussing end-of-life donation. O reminds us to consider organ donation, both solid and tissues. M ensures that we have all our medical documentation complete. F gives is for family and privacy for family, whether we have to wait for family. R is about religious and spiritual needs. And actually, we do ask families about this all the time. And even with COVID, where we can't have ministers or chaplains or priests in the unit, we've had FaceTime, we've had chaplains doing FaceTime, we've had chaplains actually coming to the visiting room, but not into the unit, to be able to actually give support and succor to the family members, because it's the family members who survived that grief, who are left with this gaping hole of a loss, but and also support them through the process of donation. We also, as Liz mentioned, we also encourage families to take back keepsakes or fingerprints or a lock of hair, because that does give comfort to them in those dark days that follow the loss of their loved one. Next slide, please. And again, this group doesn't need me to remind them about this. The truth is the doctors will always do their best to save the lives of patients, but sometimes we do reach the point of fertility, and it is our specialist nurses for organ donation who work with managers like Liz and Susan, who we've met previously, who help navigate that really, really difficult conversation and decision about donation, and are able to give the families a lot of information about what donation would entail. And the Faith in Organ Donation Declaration in the Organ Donor Register has made a huge difference in how we navigate this. Next slide, please. The other thing, as Sheikh Rizwan alluded to, is there are fears and apprehensions about last rites, about the fact that families might not be able to do the right thing by their relative, by not being able to do the last rites according to their religion. And again, our specialist nurses and specialist requesters have a lot of training about cultural beliefs, about religious beliefs, and will help families navigate this. The operations are done respectfully. They're treated, the patient is treated just as if they were alive. There is an anesthetist, there is a surgical team, and everything. There is no question of mutilation at all. And again, there's a lot of misinformation about this, but that doesn't happen. The families are also given an opportunity to say goodbye once the operation is done. Next slide, please. The law has changed. In England, it's called the Max and Kira's law, and it's a lovely, lovely thing that actually Kira lives on in Max's body. So Max Johnson was a 9-year-old who received Kira's heart, and here you can see Kira's dad listening to Max's chest and is actually listening to Kira's heart. The law changed for us on 26th of March 2021. Next slide, please. And what has changed is that we now have a duty to inquire. We ask families whether they are aware of any objection to donation, and the subtle reframing of the conversation is actually quite meaningful and powerful, as we've seen from Wales. Wales went to an opt-out system in 2015, and their families' consent rates improved from 47% to 70% as the law change happened. And what has changed is our duty. And there are, again, lots of misinformation campaigns about how the state has got control over the body of patients, and the state actually is just wishing to do this. And is it really important for us to actually say that the law has actually made things more robust than it was, because the law has clarified what the rights of the patient are. The law has clarified what the burden of responsibility the specialist nurses in organ donation and the clinicians have. And our job now is so clearly defined that actually protects the rights of the patient and their family even more explicitly than before. Next slide, please. Again, Liz has gone over this. It's just to say that we gather the evidence from the nearest relative or person with parental responsibility, and it always has to be a health worker. And most often it's a specialist nurse in organ donation who accompanies the consultant in intensive care. Next slide, please. In situations where there's no one to inquire of, donation can only proceed if there's an express decision. So they have actually registered in the organ donor register, and we cannot deem an authorization if there's no one to inquire of. Next slide, please. What has not changed is that we still adhere to processes very strictly. What has not changed is our clinical governance. What has not changed is that NHSBT still scrutinize every donation decision and proceeding to transplantation. NHSBT also look carefully at missed opportunities. And Liz and her fantastic colleagues are always looking to see what we can learn from every interaction that we have with families. What hasn't changed is our compassion and sensitivity in approaching families. There's lots more training now. We have an army of specialist requesters who are the most compassionate individuals and who approach these very, very delicate situations very carefully. What hasn't changed is that fertility decisions are multidisciplinary and they are never made by a single person. They're never made on a whim. They're never made lightly. And the involvement of the family has actually become even stronger. The family are at the center of this because we do recognize that the family are the ones who have to bear the grief for a very, very long time. Next slide, please. I think.
And I'll just stop there. That was Dr. Radha that was speaking about the just stop there. As I was saying, that was Dr. Radha speaking about on working within the intensive care unit and the process of what happens about donation. For when obviously Jay was speaking about the perspective from a donor family, but then from a clinical point of view, what is the process of what happens? So again, reiterating, you know, as Jay had said, in terms of the choice of the family, being able to always have discussions with the family, making the right decision, and then obviously the family making the final choice and being able to spend time with their loved one as well. So I think overall, you know, it's been a good understanding of what the faith states about organ donation and also from a donor perspective as well. I would like to just open up to the floor now. I know we don't really have a lot of time, but if we give about maybe about 5-6 minutes around discussion or any questions that anybody would like to ask around donation, it'd be great to have that discussion. Is there anything that anybody would like to ask? Please just, you know, put yourself off mute and please do go ahead. Yeah, Bada?
Thank you very much for all the speaking. That was really informative. It's a question for Dr. Neil Sundarji. From your experience, what are the main barriers to families going ahead with organ donation in the community, in the Hindu community? What sort of barriers have you heard of or misconceptions, perhaps? Is that a better word?
Yeah, so I think as per talking to different people in the community or there's various stores and so forth, so people can be firstly unaware or unsure about if the religion supports it or not. So that's why I think having the material to hand, leaflets on hand to give to them, videos to point them towards websites, information. And then as soon as I think they sometimes don't know how much the religious speakers and leaders support it. So I think that's one potential barrier. Then they might ask about if they're too old, or they might say, oh, well, I'm too old for that, and I don't think they'll want mine. And again, from the medical point of view, telling them that actually anyone at any age can be a donor, and getting rid of that misconception is also useful. The same, and also when it comes to living organ donation, people can sometimes wonder if their organ will be any use, or again they'll say, oh, I'm old, or I'm a bit young, or and again just giving them the medical side of it. And that's why I think, like this webinar, you need the medical point of view, you need the family and the donor and the recipient's point of view, you need also the religious point of view to reinforce the message from all angles. I don't come across it from a religious perspective, once the misconception or lack of knowledge has been corrected, then we don't really come across much resistance after of people sticking and saying, oh no, definitely I can't, because effectively through the religious leaders and speakers, that bit's corrected. There's not too much more that people then question back on that front anyway.
Thank you.
there any other questions? Dan, would you like to ask anything, or it's quite fulfilling all the information that you've taken in today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really fantastic actually to hear from all the speakers. Jay, thank you for sharing your personal story as well. How I held back the tears, I don't know. But yeah, thank you. And obviously it's a new area for us, and we're really trying to develop this area in Wales, and I hope sessions like this and getting this, you know, on our social media channels, etc., for people to watch, and as you say, Dr. Neil, get all perspectives, will be really useful moving forward. So thank you all for giving up your evening to host this for us.
Yeah, I think just on the back of that then, Dan, if there's no other further questions, I'd like to thank all the speakers for attending today, and like Dan said, giving up your evening today. Thank you so much. You know, this session has been recorded, so we will post this online and we'll be able to share it with yourselves as well. And again, you know, Dr. Neil will be happy for you to post on your website, you know, or be part of the Jain Hindu Organ Donation group. We'd like to obviously do more around the Hindu faith communities in Wales. So I think it'd be great to, you know, collaborate with yourself and Jay and other colleagues around, you know, England and Scotland, where we can, you know, educate and raise more awareness around organ donation in Wales as well. So thank you so much. Again, thank you again. Jay, any last words you'd like to say before we finish up?
No, I think one thing I didn't touch on, I mentioned my mum was a devout Hindu, but you know, making that decision around donating Ari's organs, I can truly tell you, I make tougher decisions by deciding what to eat for dinner in a restaurant. But more importantly, that decision was based on facts. Also, when Sina and I made that decision, we thought it was okay. I didn't know what my mum would say to me. And the next morning at 9, I remember that was the toughest thing for me to do, because I'd never had a conversation with my parents about death, and never had a conversation about with my parents about organ donation. So I think the one takeaway from today that I'd encourage anyone that's watching this is really have that conversation, but do it in a light way. When you're around, when you're having a family meal, as most families do, bring it up, talk about death, normalize death, and ask, what would you do? Or give some facts around the religious side, which Dr. Sajani, you know, illustrated, or even just the human side that I've illustrated from our experience. You know, there is a demand and supply, and if we can cut some of those barriers through information instead of misinformation, you know, I think our community, not just within the Hindu community, but communities at large, will actually benefit, because you know, our personal decision was not made on faith or religion. It was made on purely a human gut feel that it was the right thing to do.
Thank you so much, Jay. And it's so powerful. Your words, you know, coming from a personal perspective, is always are powerful. So thank you again, Jay, for sharing your story. And I know how hard it is for those listening, and obviously for yourself sharing it. So thank you again. If there's no other further questions, I think we'll say good evening for this evening, and hopefully we will be hosting some more faith webinars over the upcoming months. So just please do keep an eye out on the Kidney Wales web Twitter pages and social media, and just keep up to date as well. And we will be in touch as well. So I think hopefully we can do some more around the work around faith and organ donation. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks.
And thank you for chairing, Bushra.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. See you later.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.